Keith, are you ready? Good morning. I have turned on the recorder. The time is now 9:39 a.m. I'm going to call the meeting of the Venetian Community Development District to order. Today is Monday, July 24th, 2023. The first item on the agenda is the call to order / roll call. Those supervisors that are present are Rich Rocco, Ernest Booker, Jill Pizarro, and Cheryl Harmon-Tarana. We do have Supervisor Ken Smaha with us via Teams. Good morning, Ken. Can you hear us okay?
You want my phone?
Let me see what's going on with Ken. Let me just reconnect just to be sure.
Hello?
Good morning.
Hello? Good morning. Hi.
Good morning, Ken.
Good morning.
Okay. I'm gonna mute you, Ken, in the interim. Supervisor, since we do have Supervisor Ken Smaha with us via Teams, at this time, we would need a motion to allow Ken to participate and vote via Teams.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Thank you. On behalf of District Management is myself, Belinda Landon. District Council Andy Cohen is present. We do have District Engineer Rick Schoppeger with us via Teams. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning.
Hey, Rick.
Field Manager Keith Livermore is present. We have Michael Rodriguez from Resett & Company present with us as well as representatives from Vesta Property Services, Julie Cortina, Heather Alexander, and Ricardo Ocasio. And for the record, there are audience members present. Ladies and gentlemen, the next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. We ask that you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please remove your hats.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the public comment portion of the agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, as a reminder, we will limit public comments to 3 minutes per person. If you plan on speaking regarding the proposed budget, we ask that you hold those comments until we have the public hearing scheduled for later this morning. Our first speaker is Rick McCafferty.
I'll wait.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mrs. Parati.
Yes. Oh, okay, that's good. I have a few things that I'd like to discuss with you. I know we have an entrance sign that says "Welcome Home." I was hoping that I could donate a sign that would say something like "See you soon" as you exit. I thought that might be nice. And also, I wanted to mention to you, I have a picture here of this house across the street. This may be a rhetorical question, but maybe the board could look at that. I have a neighbor who is using solar energy, and it's very prominently displayed on the front of the house. I'm wondering if that's going to become a wave of the future. In other words, instead of seeing our Mediterranean roofs, are we going to be seeing this, and does the board have anything to say about where they could be placed?
This is a POA thing.
Is that POA? Okay,
Yeah.
then I'll bring it up. Who knows? I mean, it's so hard to figure out who has jurisdiction over what.
Florida law says you can put solar panels anywhere.
Oh, yes?
Yeah.
All right, so then maybe that's.
Just one person at a time, please. Lee,
Pardon?
back to your
Yeah, and
comments.
then, one thing that disturbs me is that when you leave the club at night in the winter, the path to the parking lot on both sides is dark. I think maybe some sensor-operated large floodlights could be put in, because I believe that the River Club will be responsible if somebody falls, trips, or whatever, particularly as you're going toward the handicap area where the parking lot is, the sidewalk dips. If you're not familiar with that location, as a person, you know, I'm 87, in our age group, when you're even a little younger, you could trip and fall, and we'd be liable for that. And another thing I wanted to say, I don't know whether it's POA or you, I would like to see and donate 2 benches in my husband's memory outside the door of the club, so that handicapped people, when they're waiting for their ride, would have a place to sit for a few minutes. I think that would be very nice. And also outside here, I noticed at the River Club, they have fans. You've got lights. Every other panel you have lights, but you don't have fans. I think it would be nice to install fans so that when we sit out there during the summer, you get some sort of respite from the heat, because it's enjoyable to sit outside and have lunch. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Parodi.
Thank you, Mr. Rossi.
Pretty much.
Each one of those lights out there turns into a
They
fan.
turn it for
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rich Goodman.
Why don't they put them on?
I have a lot of comments based upon the last meetings. I understand a lot of it was resolved today in the workshop I heard, especially the investor team. But things that concern me was stated like in the last meeting that there's no idea of tracking how many meals were served at the tiki bar. I was very shocked to find out we don't know that. If cash is paid and you don't know how many meals were served, did that cash really get put into the deposits? We don't know these things. How do you justify manpower at the tiki bar or anyplace else if you don't know how many meals are served? We also learned that not all vendor invoices are logged in each month. Many are found when the vendors start collecting their invoices. How do you know if the invoices are legitimate? Who's tracking orders? Who's tracking orders coming in? Who's verifying orders are coming in? If an order comes in, you say cancel the purchase order, the accounting should then know and not have a surprise an invoice shows up. That's basically accounting. You don't know if materials are actually coming to the club or not. There's a problem of theft. You put in cameras, but if the theft is occurring in the parking lot or some side shady deal outside the club, you have no idea of what's going on, and nobody's watching 36 hours of video every day to see where the theft may be occurring. So you need to have better controls as to what's coming in, where things are going, and what's happening. And I hope VESTA, the new team puts that to interest. Let's see. I just think we need better operation controls out of everything here. There seems to be a lot of things missing, and they all seem to relate back to that management system that you were looking at. That was like many months ago, and I don't know if there's been any activity on that, but something needs to be done to start looking to figure out where things are going and how to track food costs, money, invoices, purchases, inventory, and then we get a lot of other benefits out of those management systems that for the club's benefit. Finally, I think that we're subsidizing the club, the River Club, over $500,000 a year. Yet food costs here are the same as any place else. That doesn't seem to make sense. If $500,000 is coming in to run this place, why are food costs the same as everywhere else? We need to induce people to come to the club. Prices should be lower to get more people to come in, use the club, make it a destination, make it a reason to want to come here. And then also, if more people come here, more people will be tipping the employees. You'll have better retainage, better morale, keep the people here that we want to be here.
Thanks, Rich. We're gonna have to move on. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Darlene Schimberg.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Darlene Schimberg. I live at 117 Torcello Court. I have been in this community for 21 years. I had the opportunity to attend a meeting of the social committee, and in that meeting, one of the members expressed their displeasure with VESTA and asked a board member to express their opinion with the other CDD board members. What struck me is this came from someone who never attends any functions at the River Club. I know that we are still going through some growing pains, but instead of focusing on the negative, why not address the positive? Vesta's immediate response to most of our concern, I feel, is a real plus. The additions of Chef Brian and now Therese are also a plus. The attitude amongst the staff has greatly improved. Soon we'll have a new manager, general manager with Andrew Kale, and from what I have heard, he will be a welcome addition. I think we need to allow Vesta to do their job and critique them when it gets to the end of their contract, not on a daily basis. I wanted to say something about pickleball, Rich, but I'm not sure. I shouldn't wait till budget.
Budget might be a better place.
Okay. I do have a couple of other things. I understand that we are now allowing the Venice Theater to rehearse in our fitness area. What are they paying to rent this room? What is our liability in having them there? Are we covered by our insurance? Do they have their own insurance? You want to charge us an assessment, yet you are willing to give people who don't live here a room for free. I'd like to know why someone would approve something like this when this was denied with the fitness committee when brought up in their meeting. Lastly, I would encourage everyone in this community to take a more active role in what is going on in the River Club. This is an asset that we own. Just like any other asset that we own, we want to see it grow and prosper. And I hope that all of the residents will start looking at this club in that manner. Thank you.
Thanks, Dolly.
Thank you. And our final speaker is Steve Thomaston.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here this morning to advise the remaining portion of the Board of Supervisors that negotiations have started between our Traffic Committee Chairperson and the POA with Rich Rocco to address a couple of issues that we've come into line up. Primarily, we have found that there has been a corrupted database of all the RFID codes that have not been updated. When people leaving the community, their RFID codes are still there. A lot of the codes that we have gotten, they're not associated with particular license plate that goes back, so we can be able to track violations back to the individual homeowner. And in doing that, we have the preliminary steps right now in which we will work with the CDD board in setting up a system by which we can reestablish a positive database that would both be a benefit to the CDD and, of course, to the POA. It's going to be a long and hard process, but we're willing to undertake that. I've got volunteers now that are chimed in and said that they would be more than happy to do that. We're going to start our basic research in regards to what type of a database would be most useful to both the River Club here to track resident access and for the front gate to utilize there in the incoming traffic there. We will keep everyone posted in regards to that, but I just wanted to make you guys aware that this has been a problem and we're working on it. Next, I'd like to address a real quick thing. You know, we had a catastrophic storm last year that we believe that our community escaped a lot. The landscaping did suffer tremendously, and I believe that L&P has done an absolutely incredible job in removing the debris and trying to retain it. But the POA has an overall vision of what we call our streetscape, and that is going to include down the line the addition of trees, landscaping, a reintroduction of maybe the queen palms to the main entrance of the community and everything like that. But we would really like the CDD to work quite an ordeal working with any type of FEMA assistance and stuff like that, so we don't know if that's coming or not. But we hope that the CDD and the landscaping committee there will work with us and move forward with those items. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. There being no further speakers signed in, we are going to close our public comment at this time and move forward with the agenda. We now have our staff reports. John Fowler is present. Good morning, John. We do have the review of the June 27, 2023 landscape inspection report. Supervisors, this is behind tab number 1 for your review. Good morning, John.
Yeah.
All right, so performing an inspection, as you said, June 27th throughout the community. I will say that from the May to June report, and the inspection I did on June, a lot of the items that were in red for many months have been taken care of. So just want to say that. The only thing that still is kind of lingering is the palm fronds on the palms on the beachy berm. They are aware of it. They have said that it's been scheduled, so hopefully that will get done soon. But other than that, all the outstanding items are now completed. So just go over a few little items in the report. Basically 10 and 11 is still the roundabout out here. Just noting that still the tree has not flushed out. I know they're working on it, but I don't know at what point we say, let's try something new, because as much as they're putting into it and fertilizing and everything, it's still not flushing out. That's a grand area right when you come into the River Club.
John, just a question on that. We talked about this a little bit this morning at our workshop. What's your opinion on the survival of that tree if we try to transplant it someplace else?
Everything is 50-50. How long has that been there? 2 years?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a possibility as long as it goes somewhere where it gets watered. It probably needs to be watered every day for a good month or two to at least have a chance to get established, but there's no guarantee. But I think it could, it's just, I don't know, if it's always a 50-50 when you transplant.
Okay. If that tree were in 100% healthy condition, would it be green and flowering all year long?
No.
And how long would it be not green and flowering?
I would say starts going off in October, November, then you don't have anything on it from November, December, January, February, then it starts flushing out in March.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. Then the other thing in the roundabout is also just noting the copperleaf there, the plants that are under it, they're being eaten by deer. They have said that they found a product that deters them, so I guess only time will tell to see if they flush out, but that's another issue with that roundabout. So on 42 and 62 are two medjool palms that I've been noticing on past reports that I was afraid they were in decline a little bit. One is on Padova roundabout and one is on right behind the Stavali monument right here at the start of Portofino. Just noting that both of those are actually looking healthier now and flushing out new growth, so that's a positive there. One thing that's kind of continuing, but in their report, they said that they're working on it, is 48, 63, 68, and 77. They're basically all the turf roundabouts, not all of them, but there's about a third or fourth of the ones that have grass on them that had a major issue when we had the drought, and a lot of them aren't coming back. They said they're working with the landscape board or committee to look at removing that and mulching it, which is a good idea, until you eventually have the funds to redo those whole things. The only other thing I have on here is Paseo Drive, the irrigation there that we were concerned about from the last time. They did find a main line break on Paseo Drive, and that has been fixed, so those areas should look better, but we're also getting rain, so that helps as well. Other than that, it's just minor upkeep. This time of year, you have some pruning just to stay on top of, some weeds driving through the community. On my way here, I see a lot of the weeds have been sprayed and they look under control. So I'm encouraged about that. I have other properties that are doing a good job, not LMP, but just in general. So that is doing a good job with the weed control out there. That's pretty much it.
Any questions for John?
Not a question, but a comment. I would like to acknowledge LMP. They're here sorry. Comment.
Rewind.
There we go.
Comment. like to acknowledge LNP for catching up on all of the items. I know it was a lot of work because they've been there for a while, so thank you. And Landscape Committee has now made the inspection report part of their regular agenda, so and LNP is there, so we will be able to continue to monitor this and make sure that we don't get into arrears. So thank you for your work, thank you for your work, appreciate it, everything's better.
Yes.
Make sure the microphone's on for Lee. Quick question, but I'm not sure it's for you, John, but we'll find out. The question about the ornamental grasses and the work that was done on Balanza Court, a few months ago, there was an issue back there. I think you all had done some work and where there was some restoration being done back there. I was just curious, is that done, or where are we at with that?
That I'm not 100% sure. I do know that the map showed that the only thing that was required by LMP is the ornamental grasses, and it butts up right to a natural area. So I think there was a gray area on what is supposed to be technically really maintained versus let it be natural.
But are there ornamental grasses in there now?
Some of it, yes, but it's weird. We might have to have a field trip, you and I. Sometime. But because it's weird because most of the community, they're like on the hill. But down there's like a flat area where they're at, but that's also the natural area coming in. So it's kind of, if it rains like this, they're not gonna be able to get into it because it stays muddy and everything. So it's kind of a gray area on what we need to do there.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, John.
Yep, sure thing.
Any other questions?
Any other
for John?
questions for John?
Thanks very much.
Thank you, John.
Good.
Thank you. We now have the district engineer staff report, and we do have the discussion regarding the pickleball courts construction. Good morning, Rick, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm doing well. Did you want me to start with the pickleball or the other items that pertain to the engineering?
And obviously, board, I'll be glad to chime in with regards to the pickleball discussion as well.
Whatever you want to do, Rick, is fine.
Okay, because the other stuff will go really fast.
Okay.
The sidewalks were repaired along Venetian have all been completed. We did a SWIFT mud recertification for phase 4B, which is up in the Bella Vista area. The new radar signs have been installed and activated, so now I could access them remotely. We had an emergency irrigation repair at Benito and Laurel Road that was pretty massive, but we got that all completed. And lastly, I have a report of a neglected common area on Padova, and I looked through my documents and I couldn't find a common area over there. Didn't know if the gentleman that made that request is there, because I didn't hear the comment. So that's one of the items that I was not able to follow up on, because I really didn't know what the complaint actually was.
I think Keith followed up on that. Keith, am I correct?
Okay.
This was, there was possibly a tree that was gonna have to come down, back on Padova.
Oh, yes, we've addressed that with LNP.
Right.
And, we just need rain to get back there too, because he says everything was dying.
Right.
It just, there's no irrigation back there.
Right.
So we're at the hands of rain. But I really don't think that there's anything, there's one leaning a little bit, but I don't think it needs to come down.
Okay.
Can I make one comment on that?
Sure.
The other issue is, I think this gentleman referred to remote common area. So I think it's at the end of Padova, if you drive down there. And I was gonna put it on the landscape committee agenda as well, because the request is, if we're looking at damaged areas, that area is damaged, and should we be doing anything to it or not? So I'm gonna put it on the list.
Okay, well, if anybody needs me to look at anything, just let me know. Okay, pickleball. All the permits that we need from the city of Venice were obtained, and we were ready to move forward. And then we got the request to hold off until this meeting to move forward. The contractor's ready to go. I did speak with him last week. He's ready to mobilize any time. The request to hold off until now come from that letter that come in, and just wanted to kind of go through that. The newly passed city ordinance, it actually increases the sound level by 60%. The original decibel levels was 60, now we're up to 66. Now, it does call out the impulse readings, but that's exactly what we did in the exhibitions that we had done. When I did mine, I was reading the impulse sound, and in the location per the new ordinance is at the receiving end, which is the back side of the sidewalk toward the condos. So that's where you do your measurement. And at that location, I was reading peaks of 51 decibels. And then I went back to the video that the code enforcement officer had done, and he was standing at the back of the curb. So he would actually need to be backed up another 10 or 11 feet or so. But his readings, he said, when you heard him on the video, that I was getting readings from mid-40s to low 50s. Now, both of these reading efforts were done prior to any noise abatement. So we are going to still have the sound panels. We are going to have vegetation. So that's all going to help with all of that. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and I believe we just wanted to wait to have the full board, to have them together to just see what we're going to do, if we're going to move forward or whatnot. So that's what from my side. So I guess I'll turn it back over to you guys.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chair, I'll chime in a little bit. Obviously, I've had discussion with some individual board members, received and reviewed the correspondence, spoke with Rick, of course. That correspondence raises three issues the way I look at it. The first is argument with regards to the noise code, and Rick has, nobody has a crystal ball, we all know that. But Rick has a strong belief that we are fine whether under the old or the new code. The second argument had to do with our, excuse me, our River Club declaration citing to a nuisance provision within. And in my view, first of all, they're using a wrong version. It's not the most up-to-date version. But under either version, that provision is for when you have somebody in the River Club who is, boisterous at dinner or something along those lines. And I believe that that's what that's geared for in terms of removing that person causing a nuisance. The third argument had to do with the workshop notice. Again, not a grave concern the way I look at it. I've spoken with Rick about it. I know that there was allegedly an issue with the address, but it also said the River Club. People showed up at the River Club. Everybody knows where the River Club is. It's really an issue that had to be dealt with at the City of Venice level with regards to their approvals. To my understanding, it was brought up, it was dealt with, and of course you got all of your approvals from the City of Venice at this point. So all of that being said, the next question is, well, they threatened an injunctive action. So what does that entail? So a temporary injunction, there's a number of things they would need to show. One is a likelihood of irreparable harm, which I think they would have a difficult time showing, especially without anything there. 2, unavailability of an adequate legal remedy. 3, substantial likelihood of success on the merits. 4, public interest. And with all of those, they would also need to post a bond and have an evidentiary hearing to determine from the judge what that amount of bond would be. So, as I've talked about with some of you board members, I don't make the decision, you guys do. I understand the concern of wanting to wait until you're all together to have a discussion about it. But that's the way I see it in terms of background. Should we have an action filed against the district, I do have litigation counsel that I work with a number of my CDDs when there is an issue. And of course, you have litigation counsel you've worked with pickleball previously. That may be an option you want to pursue as well. So certainly, if for whatever reason an action is filed, we would be prepared to defend it with all resources that were necessary.
I think it was important that we, again, because of our sunshine laws and whatever, we can't talk about this. The letter was generated
July 5th, I think it was.
from within the community and sent by a paralegal. And
It's an
Not a
attorney.
paralegal.
It was sent by an attorney. Well, the paralegal sent it, you're right.
Yeah,
It's
paralegal.
signed by an
Signed by an
associate
attorney.
attorney.
I think we're covered on all bases. We've had code enforcement out here. We've done a sample that met all the requirements. Now the requirements are increased by 10%. It's my opinion that we've had letters before, threatening this, that, whatever, and everybody's entitled to do that. We've gotten approval from the city council, from the planning commission. We were dragged through a rather frivolous lawsuit, in my opinion, with Swift Mud. We prevailed there as well. I think we should move forward.
My question to Rick is, based upon his professional opinion, do you feel that we have complied and we will be able to comply with the new noise code?
I have gone back through the ordinance. I've read through it pretty completely. I also reached out to Jerry Jasper, being a city official. They had to go through their board also. So I wanted to just to speak with him about that, just to make sure there's nothing there that I'm not reading. And based upon everything that I read and I spoke to Jerry on, like I said, the exhibitions that we had done utilize the ordinance where it's the impulse, and my readings were only 51, and the sound doubled every 10 decibels. So for us to get up to 66, I would question whether or not we even need the sound barrier, but that was part of the plan. So, based upon all that has been done so far and the exhibitions and the ratings, it looks like we're going to be just fine.
Okay, so the answer is yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
correct.
okay.
So, time for a contrary opinion. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this and talking to a lot of people, and I kind of see three buckets, and I'm not disputing any of the technical discussions. I think for me, it's a question of promises, of costs, and of optics. I go back to, I think it was 2019, when this board promised the community that it wasn't going to cost a single extra penny to build these courts because they were going to be built from carryover funds. So money was set aside for pickleball and for dog park together. I think it was $175,000. We've already spent between attorney fees, outside attorney fees, and engineer fees, probably in the order of $100,000. On top of that, we're gonna be spending $175,000 to build the courts, and I understand there's a discussion about, we can discuss whether the planting pitch apples on the other side of the parking lot is for pickleball or not, so we can set that aside, and even if we do, we're at essentially double what we promised the community these courts were gonna cost. And on top of it, I think the optics of continuing to litigate with, I think, Andy, you said, defend with all resources against our own neighbors, I think the optics are absolutely terrible. And I have a lot of sympathy for the people who were promised pickleball. I get it. And for a long time, I felt it was maybe okay to do the courts because a prior board had said we were going to do it. I think we've been battered by the hurricane. We've been battered by time. Costs have gone up. We've got courts going in down Jacaranda, 14 air-conditioned indoor courts. Yes, they'll cost money. We've got 9 going in up the street on Laurel Road. And personally, I think it's time for us to move on and let it go. My view.
My comment would be that Andy and Rick have answered the questions that I had after reading the letter and looking back at some of the other information we had. I understand that there are some people who are upset with it. There are also a lot of people who are anxious for it. I have no problem continuing with our original motion and action, which is to continue the pickleball based on the information today. I would also say, just as an aside, that we're in New York, where I spend the summers, I live kitty corner from pickleball and tennis courts. I'm probably 90 to 100 feet away, and I spend a lot of time outside, and I don't hear it unless I actually focus on, if I actually try and listen for it. So I know that if you are listening for it, it probably will be upsetting, but I think that the actions we are taking, I think that as a board, we are looking at any sound barrier we can possibly do to make this not a problem for the people that are close. And have even talked about, maybe requiring the paddles and the balls that are even less noise creating. So I think, from the point of which this was started, I think still holds true, and I am comfortable with our original action.
Ken, do you have a thought?
Yeah, yes, I do. So with all due respect to Jill's comment, I think we've done everything possible. I know she makes a comment about litigating against our neighbors. Well, I can turn that around and throw it back in terms of our neighbors litigating against their neighbors. And the majority of, based on our survey and other factors, what people in the community want to do. We as a board have said we'll do everything we can to mitigate the sound, and we've done testing. We're willing to put up soundproofing. So the fact that the cost has gone up so much is absolutely due to the fact that a very few number of our neighbors have litigated against us and thrown roadblocks all the way along this that have caused not only $100,000 in legal fees, but the cost of construction to probably double. So we've done everything we can. Our own survey has said the vast majority of residents want pickleball, and I think it's time we go ahead and get it done.
Thanks, Ken. I just want to raise one more thing, and I meant to say it. I disagree with you on who wants this and who doesn't want it. If you look at the survey, I think it was question number 11, where it said about pickleball, not interested at all, somewhat uninterested, or neutral, and then somewhat interested and very interested. 60% were anywhere between neutral all the way down to not interested. You know, I guess for me, at the end of the day, one of the big problems I do have is whatever the source of the cost is, we've spent what we've spent, and we're now looking at probably on the order, before we even get to potential further litigation, around $300,000 all in. To me, it's just not worth it. Whatever all the backstory is, it's all water over the dam. So anyway, enough said.
You understand.
Well, you're absolutely right, it has been spent. So it just seems to me that we're committed and we ought to get it done.
I fully agree with you, Ken. In realizing that in the event there is litigation filed, then obviously, should we prevail, we will be seeking to recoup our damages being legal fees. Okay, so that would probably extend the issue even further. But I believe their action is premature at this time. There is premature being that we don't know what the sound in finite terms will be and how it will activate. But we made a decision. Now, you also indicated that they're building pickleball courts 9 down the street, as well as several others. Okay, that's like having a public pool and a private pool. This would be an enhancement, I feel, to the property values here in this development. All the other newly developments have pickleball. And it's just the way things are going forward with this. Okay, I just don't, and I would urge that we just stay the course. I mean, every time we get a legal letter, we shouldn't panic. You know, that's for the faint of heart. And there's no basis, I feel.
Well, I think what Rick is looking for is some direction here. And I think there appears to be 4 of us that are saying we're going to continue the course and do what we said we're going to do, and one that has some concerns about it. So there's no need, we've already voted on it.
Yes, no need to do anything.
So I think the message we're going to send to Rick is we're going to get started as soon as possible. You okay with that, Rick?
Sounds good.
Okay.
I will reach out to them right after the meeting here and see what the revised schedule will be.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would say one thing, we need to probably make a decision here as it relates to litigation counsel. Okay, we can't, we should have litigation counsel already retained for any type of future actions that may occur. Now, that doesn't mean we pay a fee now. They're litigation counsel appointed by this board. And should the need arise, then the attorney will be noticed as to the action that was brought forth, if it ever arises. So it's important upon us, it's incumbent upon us really, to find someone and designate that attorney as outside counsel. We don't meet for another month or so. So it's I think it's a requirement on us to act post haste, as they would say, and appoint someone.
Well, we did have a very good relationship with Lowback and Hanson, in my opinion. And if we do need outside counsel on some matter in the future, my opinion would be, let's go with what we know. And I think Mark Hanson did a fine job for us again and again. And I would have no problem in contacting them and saying, we'd like to consider you as our outside counsel for future needs. It isn't something that's going to cost us a dime, but just that this is the person that we're going to be going to.
Well, you've heard our attorney already said that,
Yes.
Yeah,
there's litigation counsel.
I have counsel that I've worked with in other cities. I have not worked with Mark before. Obviously, I haven't been involved in the issues related to the city of Venice for the reasons we know. So it's your decision.
You would be the first line of defense
No,
on this. Andy would. Because this has nothing to do with the city of Venice at all. Should you,
well, yes and no, because if I was the litigator on the other side, this is an action authorized by this municipality of Venice. So Venice may be named a named party, or we could.
I'm not talking about the pickleball thing, but we're talking about some future event that may happen.
Well, right. What I would say, just input wise, is whether it's something completely different, not even related to the city of Venice, where I have no conflict.
Right.
I am not litigation attorney, and so yes, I would advise the board to retain litigation counsel, whether it's the one that I recommend, or whether it's Mr. Hanson or someone else. That would be the advice coming from me, because I do not do litigation every day, and that is not my specialty.
So you should just make a motion.
Well, my thought would be that Andy would be the first person that we would go to, unless it's something that he has a conflict with. If it's an issue of conflict because it deals with the city of Venice, be it oil spills on the street or whatever it was, that's a different situation. But as long as there's no conflict.
Okay, well, I don't know. The problem is if we start construction Wednesday, okay, then the proposed moving party files an action on Friday. We need to have counsel already designated to oppose that action, or would you?
We would need to have counsel ready to go, absolutely.
That's my problem.
So,
Time is up.
so whether it's me reaching out to the individual I work with, whose name is Mark Garcia, by the way, or you want to reach out to Mark Hanson.
Because there's no conflict on it, should this be the issue? Or a future issue where there isn't a conflict, I would rely on you.
I will reach out to Martin and give him a heads up so that he is ready to go should we need a raise.
Okay.
Okay.
He may be away, I don't know, but I will definitely be ready.
Okay.
Well, I make a motion that be the policy.
Restate that so that we know what it's.
I make a motion that in the event
Just use the
litigation rises in this matter, that Andrew Cohen be designated as litigation counsel for this purpose.
I wouldn't be the litigation counsel.
What would be the name of the?
You can just say, if you're comfortable, that I would have authority to retain litigation counsel.
Okay,
That's
that's
perfect.
it, that's
Okay.
it. I make that amendment.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Discussion?
Any further discussion?
Can we call it?
All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay. Congratulations, Andy.
Thank you.
Anything else on pickleball? Rick, did you have anything else?
I do not.
Ken, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to set the record straight on the resident survey. If you go to question 37 in the survey, which deals specifically with pickleball, 65% of the respondents were in favor of pickleball at Venetian.
Is that the build the courts
In the
question?
proposed location, if no other location was possible.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say there is we never told them how much it was gonna be, and it was gonna be more than double that. So, all I've got to say on that
Yeah.
one.
Okay,
Well, unfortunately, circumstances have caused that to happen, wasn't the boys' fault.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, moving on, we're gonna move forward with staff reports.
Could I ask Rick one more question? Is he
Sure.
still- Rick, are you still there?
Rick, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Oh, super, thanks. Just a question on the roads, you know, following the Reclamite application. Is there anything else that's needing to be done in terms of like cleaning up, like stop sign striping or anything else? Is there anything else that's part of that project?
There was a resident that reached out to Keith last week, and he went out to look. It was a resident that wasn't there, but they had a report, but he went out to look, and so that was okay. I've not heard of any other complaints. I do know they had done 3 streets, and it was totally with they did it, it didn't bill us. We had designated for replacements, for mill and resurface. So I don't know if those are the areas you're talking about, because those are still, I mean, they're the first 3 streets still designated for mill and the overlay, but I've not heard any complaints about any other places. The stripes that we have, that material that they utilize, they actually coat them with something, I'm not sure what, but when they get done, that's supposed to help it wipe off really easily. So I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the stripes. I know we have some stripes out there because I was out there recently that are pretty weak and would be included in the next round of striping, but I didn't notice them from the Reclamite.
Okay, thanks, that's helpful. Because it wasn't a particular complaint per se, it was just whether there was anything else that needed to be done in connection with Reclamite. So I think you answered that, thanks.
Okay, sounds good. Well, if you don't need me anymore, I'm gonna drop off and make some phone calls.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
Okay.
Moving forward with staff reports, Andy, do you have anything to report?
I'm glad to answer any questions as well, as always, but the only other item I have is the further down on the agenda with regards to firearms. Mr. Chair, do you want to take that up now or wait until we reach that point?
Oh, we can do it now if you like.
Okay.
Thank you for looking into that.
Sure.
Appreciate that a great deal. I've reviewed, I would imagine everybody else has as well. I think you did a fine job with that, and
Yeah, I'll just give a little bit of background. Certainly, the board recalls our last discussion when we were together and the motion that was passed by the board. My concern at the time was trying to find the best way to implement the board's direction. And so taking a look at your operating rules, taking a look at the River Club Declaration, I know there was a concern about defining what we call the surrounding areas. There was a concern about penalties. So taking all that into account, I felt that this was the best way to accomplish those goals, since one, the River Club Declaration already has penalties if you do something wrong, as listed in Article 8. I also added a trespass provision in there as well. And the other is that the River Club Declaration already has all the definitions as to what's the club, what's the facilities, things along those lines. So I worked to make this all just fit under that. And the other thing I wanted to remind the board about is that, we wrote a memo a couple of months back. And so one of the issues that we brought up is that as a public entity, the case law is a bit murky. It's the way we put it. And I believe that it is with regards to, as a public entity, whether there could be a challenge in that regard and what the ultimate result would be. But we elected to move forward, which I understand. So I've prepared this with that in mind. I'm glad to try and answer any questions.
do we need to post signs?
I don't believe that you need to post signs. We have a whole bunch of rules in the River Club Declaration. You can, if you like. Certainly, notice, more notice, sometimes more beneficial. But, our rules lay out all sorts of stuff about, can't wear your bathing suit to dinner, but we don't have a sign up for that,
Okay.
So it's not a requirement, but if you think it's helpful, there's certainly nothing prohibiting it.
I don't know, what does everybody think? I see those types of signs around, this is a gun-free zone, that kind of thing.
To me, I mean, again, it's your decision, but unless it's becoming an issue, I'm not sure it's necessary at this point.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Because we're a public entity,
Yes.
I think you said the case law is murky. Are those two statements joined?
Yes.
So we could be in contravention, for example, of state law.
As a public entity versus a private entity, you have different rights,
Okay,
and you're governed by different
right.
issues with
Understood.
regards to the Constitution,
Sure.
Florida Constitution,
Right.
things along those lines. So
Right.
as a public entity, we could be viewed as a government entity encroaching on certain rights, whereas as a private entity, it's your establishment within reason, you have more rights to do certain things there. So that's the concern that we brought up in the memo.
Yeah,
And like I said,
yeah.
I just wanted to voice it again, so that we're all going into this eyes wide open.
Because I guess for me, and I know.
And I don't mean to interrupt,
No,
but
please do.
it's clear, and still clear, which I pointed out in the memo, that with regards to a public meeting, with regards to where alcohol is served, slam dunk, right, no firearms, period.
Polling place.
Which we don't. Well,
We are.
we do have
We are.
sometimes, yes.
Yeah.
So yes, there are certain, what I'll call slam dunk items, and there are certain, murky, as the word I used, and the law is developing as well. I mean, we have brand new legislation, which just took effect July 1st. So we may see some case law come down, and certainly I would advise you with regards to that, whether pro or con, so.
Right, because I noticed, you said that you put in the word trespass, and I checked with a couple of people, one of them is law enforcement actually, on this, and so, if, for example, it was dinner time and somebody was in the bar and, there was a suspicion that the person had a firearm, then, first you ask them to leave, and then you call the police, you end up trespassing them, and, ultimately, law enforcement is involved.
You can trespass from a public place.
Yeah.
I've dealt with that issue
Yeah.
before.
So I guess because I'm very much on the fence on it, because part of it is I would ask my fellow supervisors, what are we trying to do with it then? If we're not gonna put up a sign and we're not gonna have a metal detector, and I would argue we don't wanna announce that we're a gun-free zone, because that has its own problems, as we know from the news. What are we trying to do with it? And I don't mean that as a rhetorical question. I'm curious what you all
To
think.
me, and certainly
Yeah.
you need to have your discussion, but to me, in order to enforce something, you need to have a rule. And so if someone is in the River Club and they have a weapon and you would like them to leave for whatever reason, say, well, where does it say I can't have this?
But doesn't state law permit that? I mean, isn't that already implicit?
In the bar area and at a public meeting, but not necessarily at dinner or at a,
I see.
so
Or
at
the
a,
pool.
at a racket club committee meeting
I see.
over in that room over
Understand.
there.
Okay.
We already know those get heated enough. So.
That's a helpful distinction. Thank you.
So I would think, I personally don't think we need a sign. I think having the rule is important, and I think that I would look to Vesta to say that as staffing these areas, understanding how to address somebody who may have a firearm, then they can lean back on the rules that are in the declaration. So I think it makes sense what you've recommended, and that we can rely on that to move forward.
And I'm fine with that. I think that you have something that's gonna be in the newsletter that's gonna cover this, right?
Well, This is one interesting, and I'm seeing Andy, I'm looking at the body language. Andy had suggested,
I'm not sure it's something we wanted to make a big deal about,
but then why have the rules?
it's your decision.
So,
As long as
Yeah.
we have passed that rule, and I think it's important that we do. I think that the law has changed, and it makes me a little uncomfortable that all of a sudden we have concealed carry and you don't need a permit, you don't need any training. It bothers me. Part of my responsibility here is for the safety of this community. That's why I brought this up. I do not want guns in this facility. There is no good reason for that. And if that happens, we need to have a recourse. So if signs aren't necessary, I'm fine with that. But I want a rule in place that this is a gun-free zone.
Okay,
For the safety of everybody that lives here.
I happen to agree with you, and we're acting in a reasonable manner. We're acting in a reasonable manner, and who knows what they jump off. At least we could not be cited as being negligence in the operation of this club. So it makes common sense, okay? It somewhat restricts our negligence, liability.
Right, I agree with you, and does it make sense then to actually make a formal request to Vesta to include this in your training, so management knows how to handle someone who may have a gun? So knowing that you have a rule to back you up, so I would make that request of Vesta, that they address it in their training.
And of course, this rule applies not just to residents here, but it applies to employees as well. You know,
Right, we adopted the definition for the entire property.
okay,
I just have
So,
one more question.
oh yeah, go ahead.
Do we have, is there any liability in the other direction that we've set up a gun-free zone and thereby potentially inviting somebody who's unbalanced? Is there liability there? And again, it's not because I think that's the case, feel like I have to ask the question. on
We always
which
have
side.
liability. We're a public entity.
Okay.
We have certain protections. We carry insurance. We enact rules and policies which we think are prudent. We have sovereign immunity protections.
Okay.
So, but we always have liability for issues.
Okay.
Someone could, God forbid, trip and fall tomorrow entering the River Club. There's always issues. We take whatever steps we believe we can to be prudent to protect ourselves, but it's never zero. It's never zero.
so do we need a motion to
Yes.
accept?
There would be a motion, I'll try and frame it. It would be a motion to approve the Second Amendment to the amended and restated River Club Declaration and authorize the chair to execute and council to record.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any other discussion? Can we call it?
All those in favor, please state aye.
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 Okay, unless there's any other questions, I think I've
Thanks,
covered
Andy.
my issues.
Helpful. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Julie, do you have anything to report?
Hi, good morning. Just a few points. Obviously Jeff's not here, so just a few points to bring up from the executive summary. One, for June, the expenses, curbed a lot of the expenses. You'll see that great reduction. Jeff reported some challenges with the inventory. We feel we've addressed them all. On Saturday, July 1st, our whole team was here, including our regional account controller who's here today, Ricardo. And he analyzed everything, reviewed everything with the entering, with the pricing, and with the inventory control. So we feel very confident about that. Also, we're working on our current POS system for the tablets to be used outside on the pool deck, and also for an upgrade to bring it to a more user-friendly before we go back to the board with perhaps a new POS system. But Andrew will be here and he'll help identify if that's a logical step to take. I want to report that the Vesta HR has really overcome a lot in order to help us with the challenges for staffing this facility. So currently, we have 4 food and beverage servers that we are onboarding right now and 2 cooks. An additional 2 interviews going with that. So that really will help in the labor year to date. And with the new budget, we've analyzed different steps to take on a couple of full-time positions in order to help alleviate the turnover. So we're hoping we see that as well. And then Teresa's here as well, and she's the assistant clubhouse manager that's responsible oversight for food and beverage and fitness and aquatics as well to support Andrew. Vesta is supporting the newsletter. We will have the newsletter for August and September. And then how it works is we have it for the next 6 months monthly, and then it's every 2 months. So we will definitely have the newsletter back out. Encouraging Chef Ryan to look at menu, going to be having a new menu come out in October. Again, Andrew will oversee it and he will, we'll give him the advice on what we've seen in the past. Chef's been trying new specials in order to have a development of that as well. And he's trying different things. Vesta supported him, went to the food show in Fort Lauderdale with him, brought him there in order to see new products and also to help develop some of the different menu items. The only other thing on the calendar, on the signature events, based on some feedback, the music trivia was replaced for Thursday, August 24th for the Booty Shakers. So hope you guys could attend, and it'll be like a fun food buffet as well. We want to, one of the things, and when you're doing the workshop with Andrew, is to talk about perhaps an engineer to analyze some of the situations here. Obviously not today, the air conditioning is working very well, but we've had a lot of struggles with the air conditioning. My involvement in the club here has been even for the last year, so perhaps someone to really look at what that looks like for the future, so it's not constant, fixing it a la minute, I guess you want to say. And also we had a struggle with the Wi-Fi, very similar to the air conditioning, it was a faulty Wi-Fi that was discovered by Alliance IT, which is the IT system, on Friday. So the register didn't work at the Tiki. That's a challenge. Now we're, all geared towards Wi-Fi. So that was a bit of a challenge. Hopefully we'll have the part in and they will be back out tomorrow or Wednesday. So that's pretty much everything that I can provide.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Do we have anybody here who's a notary?
A notary.
Yeah.
We do with POA. I did talk to Sydney about that on Friday. Sydney's the Director of Administrative Services. And so I'm going to encourage her. We're going to try and get her to get her notary. So then there'd be 2 in the building.
Yeah. I think it's important that we have
Yes, sir.
2 just for the residents'
Yes, sir.
needs.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And if one is out.
You indicated that you had a Wi-Fi person coming out to look at.
The Alliance IT came out on Friday. They determined that the radio was faulty because remember, the Tiki Bar opened on January 6th. So they're not that old. They determined it was faulty, so they had to order a part. I asked if they could expedite that because it's, we have to be able to have Wi-Fi out there to operate the register system. So I'm hoping it's tomorrow or Wednesday that they'll be able to be back out.
Okay, would you ask them to look at the fitness room, the gym itself? We have a alleged audio theater out there, and everyone knows it doesn't work. Okay, especially with the new phone system going on. Now, Miles made a request. He's looking at it, but I think we probably need someone else or to assist Miles in doing it. Now, if you try to use your phone to view the TVs on all the machines or above the machine, it doesn't work. And it's been like that for probably 10 years. So.
We'll definitely report on that, so
Okay.
Heather, if you could just write those notes, but we'll definitely get the answer, and I'll go through Alliance IT, because it really is about the strength of the radio, is there enough out there? So that's we've had that experience before at other properties as well.
Can I ask you a POS question? I guess it's Easy Suites that we use, is that right?
Pardon?
Is it Easy Suites that we use for, our POS type of system? Is Easy Suites or is it Club Central or both, really, I guess?
Right, it's called Easy Suites.
Easy Suites.
Right.
Is there so I think we have to do some upgrades before, for example, the.
That is
the
correct.
iPads
So we
and
have one upgrade,
Okay,
and then we want to start using the tablets. So before, and Andrew will help analyze it now, but before we offer an opinion of, hey, we think we need a new POS, we're gonna try and use the current system to the best of its ability. I happen to believe that once we have the update using the tablets, that it will absolutely more than suffice for what we're looking for here. So, but then we would report that to the board. So once Andrew gets started, we'll bring him up to speed on what's going on, and then we'll be able to analyze exactly, hey, this amount of an upgrade, we have the tablets already, and then the board can decide if they want to invest in, another POS or not. But again, looking at perhaps having an engineer come out to determine some of the stuff like about the air conditioning or different aspects of the building for the next 10 years. We want to be able to be a partner in helping the board look at, what that looks like, so.
sure. Yeah, on the POS, I was just thinking about things like reporting, because I think it's gonna be a critical piece, not solely for running the operations. So the reporting piece is, I think, so critical for decision making. So when you do the upgrades, that was really kind of what I was getting at. Because if we have a baseline of what it costs us to do that, then we can make a decision as a board. Does it make sense to spend another X tens of thousands of dollars for a much more expensive
Absolutely.
point of sale system?
Understood.
Thanks.
Thank you. Ken? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, couple of comments.
Did he say
Go
something?
ahead, Ken.
Couple comments.
Okay, thanks. So, I did send, a few questions to Dan Armstrong, regarding June results. I'm surprised now that we're in the middle of the off-season that inventories aren't coming down more. It came down a very little bit from last month, and it still seems pretty high. The menu prices were changed and have been updated for a couple of months now, and yet our cost of sales on food is still almost 84%. So we've got high inventory, we've got high cost of sales, we've got volume dropping. I remain very concerned that that we're not managing it as well as we can, and I know Andrew comes out of the food business, and hopefully he'll have some of our insight into this, but it's been several months now, and I'm just concerned that our inventory remains high, and yet our cost of sales is still very high. And I don't see that changing for a couple months. But it's a budgetary problem.
Understood, Ken. And Ricardo is here as well as our regional controller to review some of those things that you sent Dan as well. As far as the cost of goods go, that's why on July 1st, we had all hands on deck here at the facility to make sure that we had everything set and ready to go. Since that has been trending, also have spent much time with the chef, assisting him on utilizing inventory. And as you would know, utilizing feed dinner in order to help utilize product and not necessarily have different theme events during the off season in order to reduce the amount of outside items that you need in order to do those effectively. We are looking at some other different elements. It might sound very small, but things like trying to control the tiki bar, for example. It opens at 11. We barely have any sales from 11 to 12. We're going to put out that we want to open at 12, just to help reduce costs, reduce people online here. Worked with Chef on a lot of the food products utilization, going to the food show, helping him to determine what the menu items can be to incorporate the different items for a menu mix. We are also we've costed everything out. It is absolutely at the price it needs to be to maintain a good food cost. Hiring staff, so we have the same staff is another element of that, as you would know, in order to utilize product. So Ken, we've addressed everything and also went back to Vesta for that guidance as well to assist with this. So I think you should see a great improvement August 1st. We'll all be here again to do the inventory, to make sure we're right on point with all the food and the beverage. The beverage is done much better, but we still want to make sure we're on point with that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Supervisors, do we want to cover the appointment of the general manager at this point?
Yes. So we're going to go to item D.
So we are going to move into item number 5B, which is the appointment of the River Club general manager. Rich, do you want to cover this item?
Sure. Along with my fellow supervisors, I had an opportunity to meet Andrew about 3 weeks or so ago. Myself, extremely impressed with his background, impressed with he as a person. I like his vision. I like his plans for what he can do in this facility, and I'm looking forward to working with him. And I think he'll be a positive influence on everything that we do in this club.
And I'll just say for the record, the board knows this, but our contract with Vesta, one of the items that you do have discretion of is appointment of the general manager. We have a specific provision there. That is why it's on your agenda.
So I'll then make a motion that we appoint Andrew as general manager effective August 1st.
Second.
What is Andrew's last name, Rich? I'm sorry.
Kim.
K-E, right?
K-A-I-L.
K-A-I-L.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 If you lose. Okay.
No, I just wanted to second what Rich said, and I think the thing that struck me, because I unfortunately couldn't meet with Andrew in person, we had a video, I think it's been a very busy 2+ years with Vesta, and the thing that I think struck me the most is I think Andrew brings an ability to bring stability to the team and to the club. That was actually my number one priority that I shared with Andrew. So that's what I think the chief reason why I'm really happy you're going to be joining us.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Welcome. Yeah, okay. So we have, we're done. We had the motion. 5-0. All right.
Moving on.
Yeah, we have a few people that are either catching a plane or have other things to do, so.
We do
we're gonna have to
actually,
move forward a little bit.
do we need a break before we go into Keith and I can report later during the meeting so we can jump into the public hearings if need be.
Can we do the nomination for the appointment to the Racket Sports Advisory Committee?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so we are going to jump into item number 5C, which is the consideration of the appointment of a new member to the Racket Sports Advisory Committee.
This was a person that has pickleball experience. You've been looking for?
Yes, and especially now since we know we're moving forward with the pickleball project. I would like to nominate Joe Spallina. He's a resident, he's resided here at Venetian for in excess of 17 years. He's an avid pickleball player as well as tennis player. He was one of the participants when we did the demonstration for pickleball and for sound compliance. He has an extreme commitment to this community. He possesses, I think, the experience, a positive attitude, as well as he's reasonable and social. So he would be an asset to the Racket Sports Advisory Committee. So I make that nomination.
I'll second that.
Discussion, any discussion?
Yep. Just want to go on record saying this does not allow him to lead as chairperson of landscape committee. I want that on the record. Thank you very much.
He'll be in charge of the landscaping around the pickleball.
Any further discussion?
Discussion? Okay, let's call it.
All those in favor, please state aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, so Keith and I can hold off on our reports until further down, because I know we do have the public hearing and it is 11 o'clock at this point.
Okay.
Does anybody need a break before we move into the public hearings?
Let's do a quick break, okay?
Okay, so we're gonna take a 10-minute break at 11 o'clock a.m. Recorder, and we are back on the record at 11:09 a.m. So we are going to move into our business items. The first item is item number 5A, which is a public hearing in reference to fiscal year 2023-2024 budget. We do have several items to cover, which is the presentation of the proposed budget, which is behind tab number 2. And there are 2 resolutions here that are here for your consideration. Supervisor's Resolution number 2023-08, which is the annual appropriations resolution and adopting the final budget for fiscal year 2023-2024. That's behind tab number 3. And then we have the consideration of resolution number 2023-09, making a determination of benefit, imposing special assessments, and providing for the collection and enforcement of special assessments, and certifying the assessment roll, which is behind tab number 4. So I'm going to turn it over to Andy so we can discuss procedure, especially for the audience members, so that they are aware of the public hearings taking place and what we want to accomplish today. Andy, go ahead.
Thank you. So Belinda mostly covered it, but board members will have a public hearing. We obviously have advertised the public hearing as well as sent out mailed notices. When you're ready, we'll be looking for a motion and a second to open that public hearing. We'll take our public comment, motion and a second to close that public hearing. And then, as Belinda referenced, we have 2 resolutions. The first one basically adopts the budget, and the second one, in plain language, takes care of everything related to the assessments and gives authority to Rosetta to do what they need to do to certify the roll. For members of the public, I just want you to be aware that we have 1 public hearing. That is your opportunity to address any issues you have with regards to the budget or assessments. So any comments you have on those, we'll be looking to hear that from you. The board can take that into consideration in the decisions that they make. Mr. Chair, did you want to open the public hearing first, or do you want to have a brief presentation on the budget before you open the public hearing, whatever your decision?
The only thing I'll say is that the hardest thing that I think we dealt with was the assessment for the hurricane. And we did publish a fact sheet on that. There was a lot of questions about, is this going to be an every year thing? We have no intention of doing that, but I'll just make some numbers known. We have over $300,000 that we've spent so far simply in cleanup. And based upon some information that we got at our last meeting, we may not get a dime back on that from FEMA. We still don't know, right? Except that a similar community to ours has been denied. So there's no guarantee that we're going to get anything back. We've already outlaid over $300,000. We have a massive job ahead of us in terms of putting the community back in shape. And a $1,000 assessment per household was based upon that urgent need. Rather than piecemeal this, a little bit here, a little bit there, it was the feeling of the board that we should do it all at once. And we're going to be discussing that because today's the day that we're going to finalize this budget. And it cannot be raised higher than what was presented to you, but it can be modified some. And I don't know what those modifications will be, but with that said, I think we should open for public comment. Any comments about the budget? We'll be happy to hear you.
Budget or assessments?
Okay. So in order to open the public hearing, we would need a motion.
I'll make that motion. Second.
All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The public hearing is now open. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to limit comments to 3 minutes per person. We do have, you did sign in, so I am going to call upon you first, Mr. McCafferty. Good morning.
Good morning.
Rick.
At your last meeting, I brought up a couple issues, especially on the River Club budget. Items that were 200% increases, 50% increases. I think there was one in the general budget that was up 50%. I just hope you've taken a long, hard look at those things. I assume you have. I also brought up the fact that, or a suggestion that the assessment be split over a couple of years You're gonna spend the money over a couple of years. You will not spend all that money in 1 year. All of our homeowners have been hit by very high insurance costs, as you're well aware, as you have been hit. I think if you were to split the assessment into 2 or 3 years, you'll still get the same amount of money. You'll have time to spend it judiciously and correctly. So that's just my thought. I can't stay to see how you do because I have to get my morning nap in.
And wish you luck.
Thank you. Thank you. I saw Darlene raise her hand in the back, Darlene.
Hi, I don't know if I'm bringing up a dead issue because you've already voted on the pickleball courts, but as a resident, I don't know how you can justify adding a new amenity that's going to cost this community the dollar amount that it's going to cost with all of the repairs and the necessities that we need to be done. It makes absolutely no sense to me. And no one can tell me that there's 76% of the community that wants those pickleball courts. I'm sorry, but that is just a number that I do not believe. So I would really think long and hard again before you spend more money on something we truly do not need at this time, when there's so much more that we do need. Thank you.
Thank you, Darlene.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Mrs. Parati?
Hi, in reference to item number 55 about the fountain, I just want to say I am so delighted to see that that fountain is working. The one at the entrance is working beautifully. It's never been better. And it's a nice welcoming when we come home. And also in reference to the pickleball court, I'm wondering, that basketball, is that going to come down, the basketball hoop?
Yes. Relocated.
It's going to be relocated, good, because I saw some kids playing there, and I think it's a good idea to
Yes.
keep that someplace. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lee.
Are there any other public comments?
A motion to close.
We do need a motion to close the public hearing.
Close.
Okay.
Second by Cheryl. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
The public hearing is now closed.
So board members, now is your opportunity for any discussion, and then when the time is appropriate, as we both referenced, we have 2 resolutions for your consideration.
Okay, who wants to start?
You know me, I have my list. I have my list. I have a few things on general fund and a few things on the River Club.
Let's do general fund first.
Okay, sure.
And we go,
By line number.
line number.
I do that with the grocery store too, by aisle. Are you surprised? Line 46 of the general fund budget, on the security services and patrols, budgeted at 431,837.79. And I'm really kind of directing this at Ken. I know there had been some discussion on, do we change that somewhat for the overnight patrols? Do you have a view on that, Ken?
Yeah, so here's the latest on that. Keith had reached out to Chris to try to get an estimated cost to reduce the night shift per an earlier proposal, with the addition of some pretty inexpensive software. We had a hard time getting a response from him, and we literally got the response just at the time the meeting started this morning. And rather than just answer the question, he sent 4 different proposals that I can't tell without further examination, maybe Keith can, which one actually addresses the proposal we were trying to make. They are all lower than the budgeted number, but I'm not comfortable making a recommendation without understanding which proposal it is we're talking about. The answer is, I believe we can take this number down. I just don't have a solid foundation for doing it at this point. We can pick an arbitrary number in between, and I'd be okay with that. Keith, I don't know if you have any different feeling about this based on what you saw.
Belinda and I talked about it prior to the meeting, and we don't understand their numbers. And so,
I want to clarify that though. In reviewing the numbers that were provided briefly, I mean, I just saw this morning as I was arriving, so I don't really think they hit the mark with what was asked of them, because there's what is existing, and then they are giving us a 7.4% increase in the services that we are currently receiving, when well, 6 months ago, we pretty much renegotiated their agreement, and they were provided with an increase, which makes absolutely no sense. So then we were provided with another proposal, which is 1 officer at the gate and 1 patrol vehicle. I haven't done the math yet, reviewing the overnight shift and the hours, but this would mean there won't be a guard at the gate if the overnight guard gate is going to be patrolling. So then we would have to see whether or not the district is going to fund the expense of putting up a kiosk, which would pretty much be a tele-entry kind of system, unless you want remote guard service as well. So there are other options out there that you can explore. I just don't feel comfortable giving you a recommendation when I see, first off, I have no idea where this 7% increase in current services is coming from, because we just renegotiated their contract 6 months ago.
Correct.
And the other options, the numbers just don't make sense to me at this point.
I think for right now, because this is like an 11th hour or later issue that has come in to get what these numbers are, we should leave things the way they are.
I agree.
I agree.
Well, that's easy.
Yep.
On line 660, I wanted to just 60 on general fund, I wanted to let you all know, I don't think I've seen Michael, but I asked Michael if he had any more detail on why the burden on staff salaries and payroll has gone up 18%. Oh, he is. He was hiding behind Rich. Hello, Michael. Thank you for the call last week. I'd asked Michael why the burden had gone up, and I think the answer was it was kind of across the board. I just wanted to share that conversation with you. There wasn't any one thing in particular that drove the burden portion of the staff and salaries piece up, so just that. And then my only other thing on general fund was on the assessment, but maybe we'll cover that separately.
Well, we should cover that at this point, because it is included as part of the general
Yes.
fund budget. But if there's no other line
Other line
items
items, yeah.
to cover, then we can get into the assessment.
I do have one, and that is line 39, outside counsel.
Right.
You have a note on there for board discussion, and I just think we should have that discussion since we have a big decrease there from our budget this year.
We had a larger number when we had the budget workshop. It was reduced to this amount. I'm not sure whether or not you want to move funds from your non-reoccurring expense line in here. You can also amend your budget at a later date if need be. It's your decision as a board.
I would say leave it the way it is. We can always amend it at another time if we need to.
And I'm fine with that. And then my last question is the interest earnings, because those were not included.
Yes.
And I know they're not as big as we thought they were originally because they're split by category.
Correct.
But do we want to include them since we're doing this?
Now would be the time to do that. So supervisors, here's an update for you. Rich and I have been in communication with Dana Investments, because originally, I'm pretty sure everybody saw the communication of what their projection was. The initial projection that they provided was a combination of all accounts, which included the reserve accounts. So we did go back and we asked Dana to provide us with an estimate for the general fund and the River Club Fund accounts. And the amounts have decreased substantially because there was a combination of everything. So their recommended amounts for interest for the general fund account are $10,800. And the River Club Fund, $23,300.
Now, part of that is because at this time of year, our funds are low, right?
Correct,
So,
correct. And they just did not feel comfortable in giving us a higher number at this point.
it's a very conservative number, but probably,
Could be more,
yeah.
but
could be
for
more.
now, this is what the projection is for budget purposes.
Okay, and what line is that on? So that I-
It's the very beginning, it's line 4, I'm sorry, line 5,
Three, interest earnings, or five, special
interest earnings.
interest earnings? Okay.
But there's a line on every single category, so are the ones for the reserves appropriate?
The ones that we have in the reserve, we don't budget for to reduce the reserve assessment because it's already taken, reserve interest is already taken into consideration in your reserve studies.
Okay.
So those would stay at zero.
Okay.
We show how much year-to-date interest you have, but we don't put it in the budget.
So it's basically in arrears as we earn the interest, then it
Correct.
reduces the following year.
Correct. So what would take place is the reserve committee, I would say mid-budget cycle, next budget cycle, they can review the reserve interest as it relates to the reserve study and maybe come up with some sort of recommendation for next year's budget for reserves for interest to be applied as part of the budget to reduce the assessment if they're comfortable with the amounts.
So we are then including the 10,800 and the 23,000.
Correct. So Ricardo, that would be an additional revenue for you to add at the top of the River Club budget. So that would be $23,300.
And then one more question on the general fund, is it, it's the whole 10.8, okay, great, perfect. Oh, I have one last thing. If we're going to talk about the assessment, and I talked with Andy a little bit about this, but I think that we need to change the wording to hurricane losses, expenses and replacements. And the word losses is important for people who are going to try and file with their insurance company. It's important that we make sure that these are hurricane losses and replacements.
And I did speak with Cheryl about that, and certainly, I don't have any objection to that, as long as we're all clear, and say it again for the record, that this is part of the operation and maintenance assessment, it is not a wholly separate assessment.
My only question on that is that, does that limit our ability to use what's in that line if it's not technically a hurricane loss?
I'm gonna shake my head no, and I assume Belinda agrees with me.
Not that I'm aware of. I would strongly recommend though that if you decide to reallocate those funds towards other expenditures that are non-hurricane related, that you put it on the agenda and you have a motion and a discussion, and then the board would vote to appropriate those funds towards something that is outside of hurricane expenditures for the record.
Yeah, I would certainly support that, but just by placing it in one bucket, it's not, locked in there forever.
That's helpful, thank you.
Did you have any other line items, Cheryl?
No, that's it for me.
Okay. Rich, did you have any line items that you wanted to review on the general fund?
No.
Ernest?
No.
Okay. One I did want to comment on. Ken, I'm sorry, I skipped you.
Yeah.
Did you have any line item comments?
I do. So I guess I'm gonna ask the board to consider, what a number of residents have suggested. And that's, do we want to consider splitting the hurricane-related loss line, the assessment, over 2 years, or at least just maybe make a tax this for the current budget year? And then we can address the same item for next year's budget cycle. And that would, at least at a minimum, spread the cost to homeowners over possibly 2 years.
good idea.
Did you have any other line item questions, Ken, or changes before we get into the hurricane assessment?
Just on the general fund?
Yes.
No.
Okay. I did want to, just to clarify supervisors, because I know there was confusion about line number 52, which is the affluent and guardhouse, and we did have discussions about this because there were some concerns as to whether or not we may or may not have been overbilled by the golf club. So I've been working with the golf club manager, Jay Pittman,
Yes.
on the consumption reports, as well as I've reviewed the invoices with him, and I have sent him a tracking sheet so that he could provide me with additional pumpage amounts. And there was only a minor issue in September as it relates to the charges that were billed to the district. And it's because after the hurricane, they were pretty much all over the place as it relates to the reports that their staff needed to provide. So they are crediting the district back, it's about $1,400, which is not a big amount, but that's just for September. So September, our next invoice is gonna reflect that credit back, but in reviewing the percentages, reviewing everything that was billed, what the consumption is based on the information that they have provided, that is the only item that they found. So there really hasn't been much overbilling. So I would say that our budget number should remain as is and not be decreased.
Okay, I agree with that.
I can send this consumption report to the board if you'd like to see it, with all of the details and the percentages, if you'd like.
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Got that.
No other changes to the general fund budget at this time? Okay, so I've gone in and I've made that change to line number 68, hurricane losses / expenses / replacements.
Yeah, just for the record, that changes to cut it, yeah.
Well, the recommendation by Ken was to, was it to cut it in half, Ken? To reduce it by half?
Yes.
My only concern there is that, not knowing if we're gonna be reimbursed for anything. Again, we've already spent over 300,000. If we cut it in half, instead of rounding it up, instead of 1.4, we're talking about $700,000 coming in. We spend 300 of that, assuming we get nothing back, which leaves $400,000. We have about $200,000 in possible landscaping improvements in front of us right now. Do we have enough money? Well, it's, I understand the concern of let's spread it out, but something else says to me, if we keep it at 1,000, we know we're pretty well insulated to cover everything that we're gonna need. You know, to say, well, it's gonna be 500 this year and 500 next year is a very difficult decision on all of our parts to even impose this assessment. If we cut it in half, we then say to the community, but we may come back to the well next year. I don't know. I honestly don't know if that's a good idea. I'm more in favor of let's rip the Band-Aid off all at once and keep it at what it is, just so we know that we can do what's necessary to put the community back in shape. You know, there was an email that came this morning from a resident. I don't know if everybody had a chance to read it, speaking to the issue of the place that we live. You know, we live in a pretty nice place. And other people have said, well, it looks good right now. Why are we going to be putting in more landscaping? Everything looks fine. Everything looks fine because it's been cleaned up. But there are certainly homeowners along Veneto that want some sort of a barrier in back of their homes. There's work to be done along Laurel Road once we find out what the city is or isn't doing for us. There are a lot of unknowns here. And I don't know if we should be, I don't want to say nickel and diming it, but then putting off another year for the repairs to be done. I would like to have the money in the bank. So what I'm speaking for is keeping that assessment at $1,000. We're going to take heat for it either way. And I think it's important that we have enough funds behind us to put the community back in shape.
I'm gonna have to say I agree with Ken. I don't think the list that the committee put together was obviously a lot of work, and I personally appreciate the work that went into it. My concern is we can't spend the money, we couldn't hope to spend the money in one fiscal year, number one. Number two, I don't think we have a good list of what actually needs to be replaced. Yes, it's true, 150 trees plus were taken down, and to replace them at $3,000 a piece, you're at $500,000. But I'm not entirely sure that in a year when people are facing 150% increase in their home insurance, they had out-of-pocket hurricane expenses, their sub-association fees in many cases, I think most cases, have gone up. We did hear from a resident who is a widow, I believe, who said, look, she's already struggling with all of these additional costs. And I certainly appreciate what you're saying, Rich. I think unless we can clearly iterate what it is we would spend the money on, and that we could do it in this fiscal year, I cannot, at least from my personal perspective, I can't justify voting or agreeing with an assessment of that size.
An assessment of any type?
No, I agree with, I won't spend hours debating that one. I would have preferred to have none, but I think sometimes one has to compromise. And I think the suggestion that Ken made is a good one. As you know, I created an Excel spreadsheet that I had emailed to you all for the last meeting, and I think that cutting it by half is more than enough money, because you're right, we may not get the 300,000 back, but when we get it back, we can spend it on something. So it's not like it's lost money.
I concur with Rich. Over a period of a year, this works out to $83 a month that you're talking about. Now, I think that's reasonable when you amortize it over a period of a year and you see how much it's cost. We live in a beautiful community, and it costs to live in a beautiful community. I think we should just maintain it as you indicated, Rich, one lump sum, and that's it.
I see and I've heard people talk about, splitting it, but, there is an option on the tax rolls to pay it in pieces as well, correct? Am I getting my states mixed up?
No, I don't
I'm
believe
getting my
so.
states mixed up, okay. Scratch that idea.
Okay.
But $1,000, I think that initially, that assessment first would go to repay the over $300,000 that we spent in our funds that we are now, not have as much. So that takes it down initially. So you end up with $1 million after that. We've got 200,000 on the agenda today. And so, that's $500,000 down already. When you're looking at, if we're gonna do design work's not cheap. You can't just go in and plant trees and not know what it's gonna look like and if it's gonna be sustainable in the next hurricane. So I feel like there is a chance we could actually be spending money if we move this process along. And I'm concerned about them having to stop and stutter and maybe not finish something because we're waiting for the second piece. And I just think that $1,000 is, I agree, amortized, it's $83 a month. I mean, I think that in this community, we deserve for it to look, I remember when I first moved here in 2008 and how beautiful it was and how lush it was. And I think, yeah, it looks okay now because it's been cleaned up, but it doesn't look as good as it used to by any means. And I think we have an opportunity to do that and do that right. So I would stand by my original proposal of doing the $1,000, ripping the Band-Aid off and just getting it done.
Not to mention that Hurricane Steve, we're in the middle of hurricane season.
Precisely.
What happens if we have another hit?
One of the other big unknowns that we have is irrigation, which as we spoke earlier in the workshop. You know, many of these trees came down and they ripped up irrigation lines, and one of our expenses, I mean, take a look at our monthly expenses on irrigation repairs. We don't know what that's going to be. We know it's going to be, but we don't know what that's going to be. And the thing that I know for sure is that it's going to be very costly because they all are.
Just want to throw one other thing out there. You know, down the road, there will be a time, I expect, where we want to do some capital projects, fixing up this dining room, potentially some other things. Sorry, but I won't go
You say
there.
that every.
I won't go, well, yeah, because, no. My concern is if, you know, all of the focus on the landscaping, when I think there are a number of larger issues, you know, around the campus that I think we're also going to need to be tending to, that we're, you know, putting our marker on this now, essentially, you know, putting the money down with the community and saying this is going to be, you know, for landscaping, I think may not be the best long-term vision for us to have. I think we have a lot of things to do. So I'm just concerned if we decide to go back to the community down the road for further capital expenditures, we've shut that off to ourselves because we've chosen to go this route. So just ask you to think about that.
Well, it's not shutting yourself off,
Yeah.
as long as you act in a reasonable manner as a fiduciary.
Just hold
So,
it.
I don't,
It's on, just.
okay, so it's not, you know, as long as you act in a reasonable manner as a fiduciary, you know, when that time comes, we have to act the same way, reasonable.
Well, and I'm comfortable that, yes, we are saying this is for hurricane losses and for replacements. However, as we stated before, if we end up, so we have this 1.3 million, say we only spend 1.1 million and we have $200,000 left, then we would come back to this board and say, by motion, and let the community know we'd like to reallocate that and put that in reserves for other issues. So it's not that we are saying it's for hurricane losses, but because we don't have a complete plan yet and the irrigation costs and everything else, there may or may not. What I'm saying is, I think we can make do with $1,000 per household, and we will make a design work to not to exceed that. However, if there's money left, we still have options. So I don't think we're closing it off from that perspective. If that's what you meant, Jill, I don't know if I understood at the end.
You know, my concern is if we think spending $1.4 million on landscaping is justified. So let's say 3 to 5 years from now, we decide we'd like to renovate the dining room and renovate the bar, and it's a $1.5 million project. I wonder if then we can go back again and say we'd like to do a special assessment of X in order to renovate the River Club. To me, it's backwards. I think, you secure the things you need to do first. And just from my personal perspective, I think that it's putting the priorities in the wrong place to be focusing such a large sum of money on landscaping when we have a lot of other things that need tending to, including our reserves.
And I guess and this will be the last thing I say, I promise, but I think that from my perspective, you could argue either side of that equation. What's more important? I think returning the community back to what we look like is very important. I could argue that I don't think we need to renovate anything in the bar, maybe get rid of the lights, but there are so many opinions about what does need and doesn't need to be done, but we know we have issues from the hurricane, that's for sure. We know we have been damaged by the hurricane. So I think to make that a priority and say, let's start looking like we're supposed to look, and then address other issues as they come up makes more sense. All right, I'm done. Thank you.
Additionally, when we redid this facility, how many years ago now? 5 years ago? A reserve plan was put in place to do it again. So it's not like we start out with, it's not like we start out with $0. We had put a reserve plan in place to be able to fund that in the future. Because like anything else, it's gonna wear out or it's gonna need updating. So we wouldn't be starting out with $0 on that. We do have funds.
We do, but you're talking about nibbling around the edges and not, in my opinion, doing what we need to do. But it's probably a discussion for another day. So
Okay.
I think we have to agree to disagree on this.
Okay.
Personally, I think we're making a mistake, but that's just me.
Okay. Well, then I guess we should
Do we get-
vote on this.
Yep.
Okay,
Please.
then,
Do we,
Well, I got just a couple more comments.
Yes.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I know we're calling this hurricane-related losses, but a lot of the things, a number of the things we're talking about are really not hurricane-related in coming up with the numbers that you did. And even the things that were on the quotes that we got earlier today were not all necessarily hurricane loss related. So that's really the only reason I'm thinking of splitting it. And it doesn't have to be 50-50, maybe it's 70-30, 65-35, but I'm just trying to respond to a lot of residents who have commented about this. And as you know, originally I was fine with $1,000 all up front because I don't think it's an overly excessive amount. I do have concerns. You're talking about future projects. I have a feeling we're going to be surprised when we update the reserve study next year, early next year, that with inflation, a lot of the things that we've got in there are going to be grossly underestimated. And we found that out with the pool furniture. It's more than double what we've got in or had in for the whole thing. So the only reason I'm making this suggestion is to try to mitigate the impact on a lot of residents. That's all. And maybe it's not 50-50. I'm certainly willing to consider, if you think 700,000 is not going to be enough, how do we cover, if we get nothing back from FEMA, the operating loss we've got in this year is covered how? It just falls into reduction in capital or operating funds?
Yes.
so what do you think?
We need to vote on it.
Right.
What, is it a vote?
What I was gonna say is, I don't think that there's a need for a separate motion. If they're so inclined, can make a motion to approve resolution 2023-08, approving the budget with $1,000, with 700,000, whatever, to make it part of that, as opposed to doing a separate motion.
do we need to look at the River Club budget first?
Yes, you do.
Yes, I was gonna say, I don't think we're done yet.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna jump into the Riverfront budget. Are there any questions for, the Vesta team or any particular line items in general?
We're adding that 23.3, right? Right. 23,300.
Correct, correct. Ricardo is the accountant for Vesta, so he is taking, notes along with Julie and everyone else in case, any changes need to be made.
I have. I bet it's a Ricardo question. So I see in line 23, tennis cost of sales is budgeted for this year at 0. But in last year's, or the current fiscal year's budget, we've been booking tennis cost of sales, I guess for things like, tennis rackets and strings and whatever else. So how, if we're gonna go to 0, I get it, but how are things gonna be, they're not gonna be booked at all, I guess. So if our tennis pro is gonna do something, that's all on him. That's not passing through our income statement at all, is that correct? Okay. So that's.
So we're not gonna purchase anything. What you're saying is we're not purchasing anything to go into the tennis shop.
I just want to be absolutely
That would-
crystal clear that
That'll
that's the case.
That'll be Dave's.
That will be Dave's,
Dave's,
thank you.
yes.
Okay, and is that true for staffing the tennis office for sales of things? Then I don't think that any of our staff should also be going toward.
It could include that thing.
Okay, and so there's no staff that's gonna be allocated to be selling things in there since, okay. So I'll be clear on that. Then, the only other thing I was gonna, yes?
We're covering some cost of tennis now through office coverage with a couple of the fitness instructors
Yes.
and maintenance through Carlos or somebody else that's currently on our staff. So we are supplementing cost there, not necessarily product. But we are covering additional tennis expenses in addition to Dave.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess what I'm responding to is we got a report on tennis, the tennis stuff from the committee chair, and there was something in there about expanding sales of things. And I just want to be clear that if there's an intention to grow sales of something other than services, that somehow we don't end up on the hook for that.
It's on the vendor.
Okay, fair enough. The only other thing I would, let me find out where it is here. There was an 8% request for an 8% increase in the fees that we're paying Tennis Connections. And I frankly, I think that's an awfully large number. Do we have any background on why we're going to be increasing that 8% by $5,000 from 60 to 65?
Wait, that's Amy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you all know.
I can just speak generically to it, that when we brought the Tennis Connection on, they had wanted more money than was available, or that we were willing to pay for that. With the future of pickleball possibility, instruction, costs going up, et cetera, we put that number in there. There has been no commitment to that.
I do remember that the community was told that pickleball wouldn't cost us any more money in the racket sports budget. So I'm just going to go on record then that I don't think that we should be raising that at all. The professional instruction that I'm aware of at every other club here in the Venice area, with the probable exception of the Oaks and Osprey, is not paying anywhere near that much. So I'm struggling with the number.
It was more, not, if I may, not so much for instruction, oversight, but, the gates, this, watching, et cetera. I mean, very similar to just a complex and amenity. Again, no promises have been made. We're committed to doing a periodic evaluation of the program and seeing where that goes. But if it's
it's not plugged in there, you don't have the opportunity, and that would go till, of course,
We definitely need in the contract some kind of a service level agreement where it says specifically what we're getting, what days we're getting, what the hours are that we're getting, how many times a day that the courts are gonna be cleaned, et cetera, because we have no service level agreement at all. We're being asked to spend $65,000 and I've got a problem with it.
Okay, the contract's up again this year.
Okay.
So that will be addressed.
Fair enough.
Okay. I have one question under the River Club Fund, item number 28. What is that? It's employee fitness classes.
I think that's the bump up.
What does that cover? I'm just,
Are those the instructors?
I believe that's the increment bump up, isn't it, for the employees when they're not getting hourly, but it's the increment that takes them to the dollar amount they should be getting as fitness instructors, I think. Is that correct?
It's contractor in, salaries.
No,
The independent contractor
that's
salary
27.
is part of the fitness center, that's not in salaries and wages. No, I take that back, that's in the line above.
Exactly, no, I
What is
believe I think that's the increment that takes the people who are employees from their hourly wage of whatever it's $13 or $14 an hour up to the hour fee for a fitness instructor, which is $40. I believe that's what that number is. It's the bump up in the hour that they're instructing. I think.
you think? Oh, okay.
Well, look
No,
at the
that's
budget
what
for
I'm
5
asking.
years. I think that's it. But I think it's needed if you look at the fitness overall budget to get to the number that is required to conduct the classes.
I was just inquiring.
I don't know.
It's not well worded.
Yeah, that's. It does, it looks like we are paying for it. Yeah, this class is for the employees.
but you
Well, we
are
can-
correct in that it covers the gap.
It's the bump up, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I will.
You know me, I've been digging for years.
Just going back to tennis for a second about goods and all of that. Though we don't sell anything, we do string rackets and stuff, right? And where does that money go?
We don't, Tennis Connection does. No, Carlos does.
So Carla strings the rackets and that money goes to Dave.
Yes.
So we're paying Carlos, 100% of the money. That's part of my point. Yeah. Ricardo, do you know where guest fees for tennis are booked?
No.
Ken, do you know where guest fees for tennis are booked?
The fees.
Yeah, like when somebody comes and pays a $10 guest fee.
I think it's in the revenue line.
It is in revenues? But we don't have any tennis
It's only
revenues.
like, it's only like $900.
It's about $2,000, yeah.
It was less than that. From the information from the Tennis and Racket Sports Committee that PAC put together.
That was 6 months, 930 for 6 months.
Nine
Yeah.
and change.
Yeah, for 6 months.
I have.
Year to date, it's $960.
Right.
Can I switch from tennis?
Well, I just wanted to be clear on the stringing of the rackets goes into the same category then as lessons. That money supplements Dave's salary.
Dave, Tennis Connection
That-
is supposed to buy the
That
string,
goes to Dave.
and if somebody needs their racket strung, he provides the stringing service. In our committee review of that, we were questioning Jeff with how that works. Is Carlos stringing and then Dave pays him an additional fee for his efforts on the stringing while he's on the clock? There was I believe in the report, it's a finite number, it's a small number of times that he does that. But we had made the recommendation that he do it before he clocks in, after he clocks out, those kind of things. So it's not perceived as double thing.
Gotcha, yeah. That might be a cleaner way to do it.
Yeah, I think that has to just be,
Yeah.
we need to be clear on that, because that's frankly, that's my concern over the, selling more stuff.
I don't, why would Carlos be doing that at all?
Good question.
That's not, shouldn't be part of his job.
Nope.
That's
What
what.
time could be
before he
spent
clocks
doing
in.
other things?
And in fact, he
He
does.
does it, and he enjoyed it, he's
Yeah.
learned how to do it, he's doing it quite well, but we understand the optics of it, and that was our recommendation to do it before or after. He officially clocks in, I guess you would say.
It's probably something Andrew's gonna be dealing with once he starts. There it goes.
It's education right now.
Are we moving on?
Yes.
Yep, River Club stuff.
Yeah, I have a much bigger concern. And that's restaurant cost of sale.
Okay, what line do you want?
Line item 24. So the budget that they came in with has a cost of sales number at 41% of revenue. It's the 368,518. Through 9 months, that number's running at 51%. And I questioned it at the time they prepared the budget, with the response being they felt comfortable that with menu changes and pricing and inventory control, they could achieve that number. And I honestly, I have a hard time believing that they can get to that number. I'd like to believe it, but nothing's been demonstrated so far that that's doable. Maybe Andrew can change that. But if they can't improve on that number, we're talking about, a $90,000 difference to the current run rate. So if anything, and it's not a huge number, but if we're gonna add 23,800 in interest, I'd like to see it going to be added to the restaurant cost of sales line to offset that revenue, interest revenue. And that still only brings it up to 44%.
So what number are you talking about changing, Ken?
Changing the restaurant cost of sales,
Right,
which is line 24,
correct.
to add to that the amount we're putting in for interest earnings.
So you're saying
Which
take
I
that
thought was
number, okay.
23,800.
So that would bring that up to, what, 401 and change, something like that?
It would
I'm sorry.
bring it up to
391?
Yeah, okay.
It would bring it up to 392, 318.
So my only question, Ken, I agree with you that number, that number is really low, and I would ask Vesta, how comfortable are you with that number and that cost of goods sold being at 41%?
Okay.
We agree with Ken,
Excellent.
22 would be, without obviously knowing inflationary costs on supplies and things. I've worked with the man a long time. He knows how to control that cost of goods. He's not a magician. So we would welcome Ken's suggestion. Thank you.
And I agree totally.
Okay, so the 23.3.
Okay.
So does that get backed out of that line 3 for going forward?
It goes in both lines.
So the interest-
Okay, is that how it gets booked?
Yeah, the
Okay.
interest still goes in.
It all goes in and then it's gotta come back
And then-
out.
Exactly, it comes back
Okay.
out in the
I was
expense
just wanting to
side.
understand the accounting, thanks.
Okay. My only other question is, and I asked actually earlier, and I think we talked about this before, but I cannot find my note, repairs and maintenance, line 39 and line 40. Normally when maintenance contracts go up by that big of an amount, repairs go down, but they're both going up by a pretty significant amount. What's driving that? Honestly, I could not, I went through my stuff and I could not find a note about that.
Jeff went through that, but I don't remember what he said.
66,000, right?
Well, the feeling at the time was, we asked about that, was that with the aging of equipment, the building, things that they're discovering that they're having to repair now, that they felt that that number was, the current number is too low, and that's why the increase, particularly in the equipment line, because they're spending more.
Was there a
See, but
reduction?
they're not
in-
spending more than the budget, sorry, Joe. They weren't spending more than the budget. That's, I think, what threw me. They're not spending more than budget, but it really gets cranked up next year. So was there something driving that, like we know something's gonna go, or it just seemed out of whack?
I thought there was something somewhere else that got reduced. It didn't look like it.
Well, in total, they're spending about the budgeted amount. Like they're 20,000, the projection to be about 20,000 over budget. If you take the three lines, repairs, maintenance, equipment, maintenance, contracts, and building maintenance, I think at the time Jeff's feeling was that there's just going to be a bigger need next year on maintenance.
Julie also spoke of AC.
Because that includes the air conditioning and all of that.
That's a couple $1,000, on a repair alone right there. I believe to your point, it's where they've been coded, plugged in on the actuals.
Okay,
Grouping them together is probably a better indication.
all right. Okay, thank you. And actually, I still think we're probably a little short in cost of sales. So I'm okay with leaving that because I think
Yeah,
this might be a tough budget.
I agree.
Any other questions on River Club line items?
Well, I have a question, because I brought this up previously on line 73 on credit card fees. I don't know if it's a discussion for today, but the discussion this board is going to have, I think, is how much longer are we going to accept credit cards and therefore incur $31,000 in fees? I think it could be an unnecessary expense. I'm fine with letting it stay for now, but we need to discuss this once Andrew is in place and as you move into the next fiscal year.
I agree on that, Rich, and again, maybe it's a question for me, Julie, I don't know. I think there's also a number of charges that come in monthly where people say, I didn't charge that. And so if we were to Rich's point, to get away from that, would that also solve those aren't my charges problem? Because if it's charged to the person's card, it's charged and we're not in it. Just a thought.
But we'll discuss.
Yeah, later, yeah.
We will discuss
Sure.
this.
Okay.
Any
If
other,
anything, that number is low.
You think it's higher, Ken, than 31?
I think it's going to be higher.
Okay.
Based on their 9-month run rate this year, it's running about 4.4%. of restaurant revenue, which would bring that number to about 39,000. But I've gone back to Dan this month to ask the question, are there some anomalies in there? Because the last 2 months have been extremely high. So there's gotta be some catch up. I mean, this month is over 8% and the last month was 12%. And there's something screwy going on there.
Okay. Okay, we'll save that discussion, but we will have that discussion.
Any other line items?
I'm good.
So we've completed the review of the general fund and the River Club Fund. Ken, did you have a question?
No, I just want clarification. So we're going to add the interest earnings of 23.3, and then we're going to increase restaurant cost of sales by the same 23.3?
To bring that up to 391?
Yes.
Everybody.
We went 391, 818.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other review, any other line items?
I'm good.
Okay. So at this point, we would then move into the consideration of resolution number 2023-08, which is the annual appropriations and adopting the final budget for fiscal year 2023-2024. This resolution is behind tab number 3 for your review.
And it would be a motion to approve 2023-08 with the budget with the changes as discussed today and whatever the motion is with regards to the hurricane assessment.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2023-08 with changes as noted.
Second.
So that would, just for everyone, that would be keeping the hurricane assessment as
Keeping it at
proposed.
$1,000.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Call it.
All those in favor, please state
Well,
aye.
Go ahead, Ken.
Only to the extent, only to the extent that we don't want to discuss any further the hurricane loss amount.
I'm suggesting that we leave it at $1,000.
Okay. I understand the motion.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor, please state aye.
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 Those opposed? No.
4-1.
Motion carries 4 in favor, 1 against.
And board members would be looking for a motion, if you're so inclined, to approve resolution 2023-09, which as stated takes care of levying the assessments and providing the requisite authority to resent it as certifiable.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay. Before we move forward, does anybody need a break? Okay. So moving forward with our agenda, supervisors, we are going to go back. Actually, I think we can move forward. We can move forward to item number 5D, which is the consideration of resolution 2023-10, redesignating the secretary of the district. This is behind tab number 5 for your review. This is just a housekeeping item. Bob Schleifer, who was previously appointed as secretary, has moved on from his role within Rosetta. So we would be appointing Scott Brizendine as secretary for the district.
I'll make that motion.
Second. 1 second.
You running unopposed?
Well, the salary.
Okay, so that was a motion by Rich. Is there a second?
Sure.
Second.
Sure. Cheryl.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
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 Thank you. We now have item number 5F, which is the discussion and consideration of the Venice Theater use of the River Club Aerobic Studios. There was a request that was submitted directly, I believe, to the River Club general management team. And it was forwarded to the board for review. And I know that Jeff expressed some concerns regarding the allowing the usage. And I know that the board wanted to discuss it. So Jill, do you want to lead this conversation or Rich?
Well, I'm surprised that it got to the board. I felt this was a general manager's decision. I mean, that's where we have a general manager to make these decisions. We were given, it's a resident who has made this request. So it's an outside group, but we have a couple of residents that are part of various aspects of Venice Little Theater. They can't conduct their rehearsals there because of the damage from the hurricane. We, being a good neighbor, can offer this location for them. They have insurance. They've agreed to take all liability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't see any reason why we shouldn't allow this. I think it's a public service for a good cause.
Can I borrow that? Sure. Because I think I might owe you an explanation. Not understanding the procedure, I wasn't sure, and feeling exactly as you do, I wanted to be sure that if it had to go in front of the board, that we wouldn't have created an impediment knowing the timing of the Venice Theater I just wasn't sure, so I threw it on, I emailed the crew and said, do we need to put this on?
Yeah.
So, because I completely agree with you.
I recommended that it be on the agenda,
Yeah.
so it's something we got.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
that's
I
fine.
agree with you.
Okay, so, anybody else have
Lawyer.
Well, I would be supportive of this, but I think we should consider a lease at a fee of $1. Okay? That way, we can deal with the liability issues and things of that nature.
well, they've agreed, Mary's here.
No, but
and,
I know.
As a retired attorney, she
And
has agreed to take all liability, sign whatever is necessary in order to facilitate this.
that's all well and good now, but it's just for the protection in the long run in case someone gets injured or something else happens, then you have a lease agreement for $1. That's what you normally do.
If that's
in
what's
these things.
necessary.
Mary understands that.
If
And,
that's what's necessary, I'm fine with that.
okay.
How long is the use
And Mary,
Until,
I know,
it's from a date in August till I think October 9th? 10?
Okay.
So it's about a 6-week period. It's 4 days a week, 6:30 to 9, I believe, possibly Fridays here and there, depending on how the production goes, I guess. And then I would ask that Mary give us a nice write-up in the
yes.
program.
She will. She knows how to.
I'm sorry?
I love the name of the show.
Wait a minute, yeah.
I do too.
Maybe we can have a Venice night there. A Venetian night, Venetian night. But, Murray has done so much for this community, and she, instead of, she was out there running that whole hurricane recovery period by herself. Before even taking care of her own personal property, she was out there doing it. So I'm fully supportive.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that we, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ken.
Who from, maybe Julie can answer this, who from management is here during those hours? From Bethlehem?
Jim is
I
open,
think
right?
they're just debating that
Yeah,
right now.
Jim's over. Did you
Only
go
if
on
it's
the
a
side?
dinner night.
They
Right.
might have a supervisor here. Sometimes I'm here, sometimes I'm not.
I'm usually here from 10 to 8.
Right.
Um,
So the lockup procedure, I think, is something, Mary, that would be part of it, so that there, I mean, because that would be management's function essentially, is to lock up.
Well, they would have to use the fitness store because
Yes.
the doors that lead in here would be locked. So then it would have to go out through the fitness area.
But if I understand correctly,
Inside tennis.
there's already a discussion about how what the procedure would be to ensure the building's secured. I think that's underway, isn't it?
I can just, what I've said is that, what I would recommend, putting on the attorney hat, what I'd recommend is that we have something specifically in writing. This is exactly what we expect you to do. This is the contact information, and as I indicated to you, and I agree with you, Ernest. I think a lease of $1 with that language in there would, and I don't have the authority to speak on behalf of the theater, but I can take that back and say this is what we think is appropriate.
I'd be glad to prepare that. Like, we already have a lease with the POA, so I'd obviously use that as base.
Sure. All right, so Andy will prepare it and we'll move on from there. So do we need a motion to approve this?
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay, then I'll make a motion.
When is the studio normally cleaned?
When is it normally cleaned?
Is the studio cleaned at night?
Yes, the housekeeping company is here at night.
Yes,
Okay, and are they going by 9?
They usually,
not necessarily. It just depends. They have their own
they're here
access.
usually around 6
Yeah,
or so.
it just depends.
We can work around it as long as they don't.
Okay.
Yeah, and Ken, I think
So
Mary.
while,
And I
well, I
would be happy
recognize
to clean it
it's a
out.
good cause, it's a good neighborly thing to do.
Yeah.
It's setting a precedent. B, it's gotta have some impact on how we maintain the facility, and that classroom has been criticized significantly about not being clean, on a regular basis. I would consider this an outside event for which we currently have a moratorium on. And I just wanna make sure we're not just jumping on this because it's a great neighborly thing to do when everybody loves Venice Theater. That we're thinking it through for over 6 weeks of 5 nights a week. Because the response from the River Club management sounded like they were really not in favor of it.
I don't know if they were not in favor of it or they were just uncertain of what to do with it. But we could certainly include something in the lease that if this proves to be untenable.
Well, they said that there's no management here during those hours. And it would be the normal cleaning time. So I'm just raising these points so we thought it through completely.
Ken, I understand where you're coming from, and I guess maybe it's one of the reasons it's good, it's on the agenda, because my view was, full disclosure, I did talk to Mary about it and asked her a bunch of questions. One of which is, I understand the point about setting precedent. On the other hand, I think this is an extraordinary circumstance, in an extraordinary time. So it isn't, I would view it not necessarily as setting an absolute precedent. I think it's a one-off because of the circumstances, in my view.
I agree with you, and that was what I was gonna say. It's an extraordinary circumstance, and I don't think this qualifies, in my opinion, as an outside event, because it's not something we're doing for profit. This is an extraordinary circumstance, so I'm comfortable with it.
I agree.
I am too. It's just somewhat disturbing. You hear these rumors all the time that it's a fait accompli, done already by the rumors.
I've never heard such.
Sherman, you did it 4 weeks ago.
All right, can we go back? Can we go back to the item then? And we need a motion to, I'll make a motion that we allow the Venice Little Theater use of the aerobic studio as outlined. and have district council prepare a lease for $1 for the full tenure of that rehearsal, whatever you want to call it. Okay. You'll come up with a good word.
Sure.
Thank you.
Is there a
Okay.
second?
Second.
Any further
Questions?
discussion?
Okay, let's call it.
All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Okay.
Who's done
Yeah. Do you want to do the field manager and district manager reports?
We
or-
can, Keith, do you have anything to report?
Just a couple real quick things. I've been in contact with the Forest Service. They were here talking with Jerry Lewis about something going on out there in that preserve out there, about coming in and where some of our buffer areas or our wetland areas on the outside where we're killing a lot of the pepper trees on the outside, and it's unsightly. And you've all had the emails of so I'm in conversation with these guys. They're going to come out and they'll do it for free. Okay?
What?
For free. All right. And we're going to go and I'll show them some of the areas that I've talked with Solitude about what they think are some of the worst of the pepper tree areas. And so when they were supposed to be here Friday, they didn't come in or get in touch with me. So today I'll get back and we're going to go look at some of these areas to make sure. Now, free is a great thing, okay? But it's really just a one-time thing. And so, those areas grow back. And then, you clean them up before, well, that's a cost, okay? That's going to, someone said they'll come out every 2 years. Well, they haven't told me that yet. So I don't know about that. But if you want me to proceed, we can, I'll take them and show them, the areas that we're concerned about. They'll just go in just a few feet. And it'd be basically the same thing that Solitude was going to do for us at a cost of, I'm not sure, I think it was $11,000 or something to take out some of those trees just right on the edges. All right. Don't want them to go all the way into the buffer or into the wetland and the preserves to do that just on the outside, just a few feet in and get rid of some of those. And they just mulch it up. They got a machine that just goes right through and mulches it all up and chews it all.
It doesn't spread it, Keith, when it does that?
It goes right out behind.
I see, but in other words, mulching it up doesn't make 1,000, it's like a hydra where you end up with another 1,000 pepper trees.
No.
Okay.
And these pepper trees are all basically dead now anyway but pepper trees do grow back. Okay, so that's one thing. All right, so you want me to proceed and, have contacts with them and show them?
I would say proceed. And also, if we get this cut back, the first couple feet cleaned up, and if we stay vigilant with spraying, we may be able to get a handle on the problem. And I think it's a good idea.
Well, I'll get more information with them when they have boots on the ground and we're all right. Then I'll get back with you on an update on that. One other thing is signage. We've had, there's all of our signs is not up. I thought it was up because when talking to them, there's two streets that don't have signs. And I called him and he said, I said, you guys put up temporary stop signs there, but you don't have the street signs. And happens, and I keep telling people, and I just found this out Friday, that this street has a stop sign on it. So all of the stop signs, as temporary stop signs, we're supposed to be getting signage, or new signs, new stop signs. Well, there's two roads that aren't, and I bowed for forgiveness because your street isn't going to get one, and but they're going to expedite getting them out here. Okay, they just let it fall through the cracks. You know, they put up the stop sign, temporaries, and there's two, and I talked to Eddie Johnson, and he is expediting that as much as fast as they can to get those signs put up. But the folks on Medici, you know, I've had a bullseye in my back for some time because I say, they're coming. Well, they're not coming yet. So just to keep you abreast if you hear anything about that sign. But other than that, I still love my tree.
Oh, I'm with Keith. Maybe we should donate.
We could probably send it down to Rotunda.
Go ahead, Ken. It's a thing between us.
I just wanted to ask him what the latest was regarding the fencing along Laurel.
Still haven't heard from the city. You know, talking with a member on the council, she has stated that the city does and has, you know, it's theirs. They're going to do it. We're on the list. Page 7, and it's at the bottom of page 7. So, you know, whenever they get to us, they'll get to us. We have, Dan and myself have stood some of it back up and tied them with zip ties and as best as we could, but the remainder is gonna have to fall on the city when they deem necessary to get to us.
Okay. And are you gonna get to Ally to get clarification on this patrol security
Yes.
question? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, just a quick question for you, Keith. That message I passed on from Mitzi Fiedler about to you for that Laurel Road County may be doing something she heard. Do we know any more about that?
Not yet. You know, nobody I think is, I've got calls into a couple different people, and I don't think anybody's willing to step out yet because I don't think they know exactly what's gonna happen and how much is gonna be done. And so I don't think anybody's ready to take that step and say, well, we're gonna do all of this and, you know. All right.
I want to be able to say, if Mitzi asks me, I can tell her that we're looking at it. So, cool, thanks.
You bet.
Any other questions for Keith? Thank you, Keith.
My pleasure.
All right, on my end, supervisors, the next regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors is scheduled for Monday, August 14th, 2023 at 9:30 a.m. Will everybody be here?
I will not.
That's gonna be a problem.
Okay.
Not necessarily a problem for me, it's gonna be a problem for the board because we won't have a quorum.
Right.
So I'm suggesting that we cancel that meeting.
Okay.
And that we call the meeting at the end of August, and we'll see if we can get a quorum at that point. But from what Ernest has said, he's gonna be gone, Cheryl's gonna be gone, Ken's gone. I love you, Colin, but it's just us.
Ain't enough.
Out of curiosity, is there, although we can't have a meeting per se, can we still have a workshop? And does it make sense to use one of those two August dates?
The reason I wanted to use the last one for the possibility
The
that,
28th,
that somebody could come back.
but not the 14th, so yeah.
But I'd like to put a little bit of time between. So let's I'd suggest that we keep the 28th.
Okay.
And see what happens.
Okay, so I did have a conference call with our program delivery manager with FEMA on Friday, and they are still reviewing the hundreds of documents that I uploaded. I was able to provide them with all of our maintenance records for irrigation. LMP was able to provide me with a whole year's worth, which was over 350 pages. So they do have what they need. Some of the essential elements of information portions were sent back with additional questions for me. I should be getting to those hopefully midweek. I'll respond to them, resubmit them, and then I have another conference call scheduled with her for next week.
Okay.
So as of right now, they're just reviewing all of the documentation, invoices, check copies. I was asked for a copy of security procedures, which I expected. It's become a little common now that if you have a guardhouse and you do have amenities wherein you charge a fee, there is a proper possibility that FEMA could come back and say they were going to possibly deny the district. It's only happened to us right now at one district, even though we have not received the confirmation, so we've gotten a little bit ahead of ourselves with the process, Andy and I, to prepare, because we have 3 districts that we think we're going to have the same issue for, and we are preparing.
Okay.
And we've done some research with regards to appellate rights, and also we've located as there's a specialist for everything, there's actually a FEMA attorney that works at a very reasonable hourly basis, that we might be able to utilize his services as well, if we need to.
Any questions for me? So moving back to item number 5G, supervisors, we do have the consideration of the July 2023 Landscaping Advisory Committee recommendations. There's several proposals that are behind tab number 7. Sharon, you want to take us through this?
Yes, and
Okay, go.
we actually spent a lot of time on the workshop on this, so we could go through some clarification. So in summary, these items are the items that are a little more on the quick fix side than some of the stuff that needs planning and review for design. So what I am requesting is, and let me just ask the question first, is number 1, the front entrance?
Yes.
Number 4, the roundabout. Number 5, the pool area, and number 6, to be approved to move forward. And that would be a total of $23,329 for those 4 items, to get those completed.
We had given that more or less a positive note
Yes.
this morning.
Yes.
So I don't know if there'll need to be any more discussion, but do you want to make a motion on that?
I would make that motion
The items
that,
as indicated?
as indicated, 1, 4, 5, and 6 be approved to move forward.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Can we call it?
All those in favor, please state aye.
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 Okay. Now, the other ones that are here, we discussed getting second bids.
Correct. They are approved
Tend to
in
be-
theory.
Right.
But we will get a second bid on each of them because they are a more significant amount per item.
Right.
So those 3 will get a second bid from a different company, and
Okay.
we'll bring that back to the next meeting.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
That's done.
We now have item number 6A, which is the consideration of the minutes of the Board of Supervisors meeting held on June 26, 2023. These are behind tab number 8 for your review. Are there any questions, comments, and/or changes to the minutes as presented?
I have no additional changes.
There are no questions, comments, and/or changes. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
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 Thank you. We now have item number 6B, which is the consideration of the operations and maintenance expenditures for the month of June 2023. These are behind tab number 9 for your review. The expenditures for the period of June 1st through 30th total to $145,047.08. Are there any questions regarding the expenditures?
I don't have any questions.
If there are no questions, we'd be looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
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 Thank you. We now have consent items, which fall under item number 7, 7A, number 1, 2, and 3. Number 1, Fitness and Pool Advisory Committee meeting minutes of April 19th and May 17th, Landscaping Advisory Committee meeting minutes of June 5th, 2023, and Racket Sports Advisory Committee meeting minutes of May 8th and June 12th.
I'll make a motion, we accept.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
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 Supervisor requests or comments? Are there any supervisor requests or comments?
My constant request is to get paid for the other half of the,
I'll check with Vanessa.
okay. Other than that, I'll just want to say thank you to my fellow board members for dealing with things efficiently today. And thank you for flying back.
Certainly, happy to. I do have one quick question. And a couple of meetings ago, I don't remember how many, we talked about forming a ad hoc committee for the dog park. And we were gonna send out a request for volunteers. I haven't seen that. Did that go out? What do we, where are we? Do I need to do something? That's
So we
my
were waiting
question.
for the charter first before we sent out
Oh,
the,
see, I didn't know that, so there we go.
yeah, so.
Or I forgot.
Yeah, so we need, the draft charter.
It's in my court.
Okay. And then, we would advertise it
Okay.
because I'm pretty sure we're gonna be asked for a copy of the charter.
Well, I'm really glad I asked since it was my issue. All right, I'll get that to you.
I'll say, in just adding on to that, my discussion with Jay Pittman, and some looking around that we did, he hasn't given me a final answer, but I will, I forwarded him all of the architectural plans that, the engineering plans rather, that Rick Shopper put together so that he could pass it on to the higher ups. And I will speak with Jay and see if that's still viable or if it's no longer workable, but I'll ask him.
Any other supervisor requests or comments? It is 12:41 PM. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
So.
All those in favor, please state aye.
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 Thank you. Meeting adjourned at 12:41.